Hey guys, today we're in the book of 1 Kings chapter 5. Now Solomon is on the throne. He has lots of wisdom. The world is coming to him because of his wisdom. And now it is time to do what the Lord said his father could not. It is time to build the temple of the Lord, a permanent place for God. And so he goes to Hiram. In Jewish or Hebrew talk, his name is Kariram. But we'll just call him Hiram because that's what we call him in English, right? He goes to Hiram, which is the king of Tyre, okay? Which is the north west of Israel. It's on the Mediterranean coast. So it's to the northwest part of Israel. And he goes to him. And we see a couple interesting things here, right? We see that it says that Hiram always loved David. David, though he was the warrior and though he expanded the borders of Israel, not everybody was an enemy to David. And so Hiram, the king of Tyre, which is Sidon, they had some kind of alliance. They had a friendship. So he goes to him and notice what he says here in verse 3. Solomon says to Hiram, "You know that David my father could not build a house for the name of the Lord his God because of the warfare with which his enemies surrounded him." We see a glimpse that Solomon says to Hiram, "Hey, I know you know." So not only were they just alliances or maybe had a peace treaty, but we can see that David and Hiram had something more, that David had spoke to Hiram about spiritual issues. He wanted to build the temple, but the Lord prevented him. He said, no, he can't build the temple. And so we see maybe was a little friendship there, more than just king and king of neighboring countries, but there was some spiritual talk in there, right? Because of the warfare with his enemies surrounded him until the Lord put them under the soles of his feet. This is Egyptian talk. This is what we call Pharaoh language. And so basically the Lord told David, hey, you can't build the temple. I need you to expand the kingdom. I need you to put everybody under your feet. I need you to reign, expand the borders, and then somebody else will build the temple, which will be his son Solomon. But now the Lord my God has given me rest on every side. There is neither adversary or misfortune. That word adversary in Hebrew is the same word that we get the word Satan. It says there is neither Satan nor is there misfortune. Once again, golden age of Israel. Everything is moving, it's cooking, age of prosperity, everything is doing well. So he wants to build this temple, but he needs some wood. And he needs the best wood in the world, and that comes from Lebanon, the cedars of Lebanon. But the problem is that the trees are in Lebanon, but the craftsmen, the lumberjacks, are in Sidon, and these are the king of Tyre. These are Hiram's people, and so he says, "Here's what I need you to do. I need these timbers, so I want you to get your men and to go and to cut down the trees, haul them out, cut them to what we need, and to bring them to me." And he says, "Hey, I will give you anything that you ask. I will pay your price. We're not even going to negotiate. You say what it'll cost, and I will give you exactly that." What's interesting about this is that we have the temple of the Lord is being built with Gentile lumber and Gentile laborers. It's kind of an interesting point that once it gets built and after several years, it becomes the place of Jews and Jews only, right? The temple is for Israel and Israel alone, but yet it will be built by Gentiles and Jews together. A little prophetic nature of what is to come, that Gentiles and Jews will come together. And so he says, hey, I need you to do it because you're the best, right? And verse 8, Hiram sent to Solomon, I am ready to do all that you desire. King Hiram says, absolutely, I'm here to help. And he said in verse 9, I will do this if you provide food for my household. So he didn't take advantage of him. He didn't ask for some crazy amount of money or gold or whatever. He said, hey, you just feed my house and I'll make all these guys work. And so it's exactly what they do. Verse 12, the Lord gave Solomon wisdom. So it's not that he just gave him at one time after the dream, but he continued to give Solomon wisdom. And there was peace between Hiram and Solomon, and the two of them made a treaty, which is important because it's on the border, right? You have Sidon, you have Tyre, Lebanon, you have the northern part of Israel. There is a peace treaty there. Solomon drafted a labor force of 30,000 men, which is an amazing amount of men, and he sends them along to help these Gentile men, these Sidonians, right? He sends them up there to help them, to cut the trees, move them, to do everything. And then also in verse 15, it says Solomon had 70,000 burden bearers and 80,000 stone cutters in the hill country. Now, it doesn't say this here. We will find out later that these are Canaanite slave labor. As David went and took over, right, Solomon comes in, makes these guys slave laborers. And so remember, Canaanites were, all they did was to build temples and idols. And so they were very skilled in this. And a lot of people believe that this was Israel who did this. And they said, well, they would gain this skill from Egypt, okay? From the time that the temple is built from Egypt, there's almost 500 years in between. It's 500 years between they leave Israel in 1440 and when the temple is built, about 960. So there's about 500 years. And so those traits would have been lost, okay? Those skills of stone crafting, even if Israel was stone crafters for Egypt, and I don't believe that they were, but if they were, that skill would have been lost because they haven't been doing this for 500 years. And so what does he do? He has to get people who are skilled artisan. Well, who is that? These are all the Canaanites who were there that were taken into slaves, who literally their job and their life was to build temples and altars to all the other false gods that were in Canaan, right? So he used them to build the temple that was for the one true God. And so notice it gives us a little look into, hey, why couldn't David build the temple? David needed to expand the kingdom because we needed 30,000 men to go up and help the Sidonians. We needed 70,000 burden bearers, slaves. We needed 80,000 stone crafters. There needed so many people. And in David's time, the kingdom had not grown that big, right? And so though we want to do things for God, sometimes it's not our place. We're there to do step A because God needs somebody to do step B in order to have step C happen, right? We're just one little piece in the puzzle that God is creating for his kingdom, right? And this is just one of those burdens. Verse 16, Solomon had 3,300 chief officers. We would call that today mid-management, right? These are overseers of all of these slave laborers and all of these artisans and all of these people putting it together. There were 3,300 managers, on-site managers, to make sure this is happening. They cut costly stones, which means they were quality. If it wasn't the best, they would throw it away, right? As you would quarry out, right? Not with lasers, not with bulldozers, not with dynamite, but as they would chisel, if something cracked, something broke, they would set it aside. They would not use subpar stones in order to build this. And then the last thing we see in verse 18, Solomon's builders and Hiram's builders and the men of Gebal. Now, we haven't seen this before. The men of Gebal did the cutting and prepared the timber and the stones to build the house. The men of Gebal, we believe that these are the Gilbites, okay? You don't know, and it doesn't matter, but this is north of Sidon, north of Tyre. And so once again, these are Gentiles, but because of where they were at, and because of what they were due on the coast, these guys were excellent stonecutters, and we believe that these are the men of Gebal. They literally lived at the foot of a mountain, and that's what they did. That's what they are known for worldwide, in Scripture and out of Scripture. Rome used these people, Greece used these people, and Syria. A lot of other people along the world use these because these were the best. And so basically, we're getting the story that Solomon is going to build this temple, and he's getting the best of best, no matter whether they're Jew or Gentile, to build this permanent place for God. So I hope that makes a little bit more sense, and we will see you tomorrow in chapter 6. God bless.